What's up, YouTube? How you doing? It's James. It's been a minute. I'd say it's been a few months, probably more than a few months since I posted the last video. Um, the urge hit me to make this video. Though I haven't stopped using YouTube, I've just been doing other things. This is my only platform. I've been working on another platform where I don't use my face. And that's been a little bit more successful than this one, but let's be honest, I've been putting more work into that one than this one. I don't know if I'm going to put more work into this one fully yet or not. Today might be the inclination that I am, at least on a subconscious level for me, so we'll kind of see. But yeah, anyway, I don't really have a topic. I kind of do, but I kind of don't. And I guess I'll put it like this. I kind of want to talk about where I see what's happening in the world, at least in America today, taking us in the future. Some of it you may already know, some of it you may already guess, but if not, just for if anybody does watch this and see it, maybe it might spark some curiosity and make them look into it or think about it. Because I think that, you know, I don't know if I'd say it's what am I saying? I don't know if I'd say it's cliche to say that like everything's interconnected, but in a world where the technology is being moved or progressed in the way that it is, if everything is not interconnected, it will be. But the problem is that the interconnectivity that we're going into will be heavily regulated and controlled, if we're not careful, by a very small group of people who are only motivated by their own self-interest and not anything altruistic or good for humanity as a whole. And I think that warrants a moment of pause, self-reflection, not only on an individual level but a societal level, and not only being able to discern and think critically about these things, but also coming up with plans and executions to move forward in order to prevent the worst outcomes, because I think in some part of this is pretty much inevitable, but also to bring about probably some more positive outcomes. Now, what do I mean by that? We'll start with AI. I don't know if you're heavily on social media or YouTube's probably one of the big topics in the world right now. OpenAI, Meta, Grok, Google's AI, all these different companies like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, all these different companies. Everyone's pushing out their own AIs. I do very much believe, based upon the people who are building these companies, these corporations, and funding this technology, and the people who are actually innovating and moving this technology forward, and based upon not just the advertisements but the engagement with their general public that I've seen, that like they say, the next internet's pretty much going to be AI driven. Maybe not so much just AI agents, but everything is going to have an AI element to it, most likely in an administrative or administrative, controller, or direction driven part to play in whatever we do. I guess now that in some senses can be very good, but in other senses can be very bad, based upon if you have any type of knowledge of how AI works. And I think most people don't really understand how AI works and how AI is progressing. One, because if you look at anything that they present to you, sometimes it can be really confusing. They like throwing out these models, and if you're not already really inclined into understanding the technology of that or the math of that, it can be very complicated to understand. And I'm going to give you a very, very basic breakdown of my personal understanding of it. And if I'm wrong and somebody sees this, please correct me. I want to learn and grow better. But I don't think I'm that far off, and I'm going to give it a description. So, AI is not consciousness. Let's just start there. It is not a thinking, breathing thing. It doesn't come up with its ideas or formulate ideas on its own. And even though it can learn and adapt, it doesn't do it like humans do it. And I'm not sure if it ever will. The experts say one day that will happen, But where I stand right now, from what I've seen, is that it most likely is going to be a very, very good facsimile for real thought. And what I mean is, it's like, it's going to look like real thought, it's going to feel like real thought, it's going to look and feel like consciousness, but ultimately it never will be. And the reason being is because if you understand anything about how AI was formed, basically all AI programs are large word model programs. They're all these algorithms. I know that's the word sounds definite, so I'm going to give the best layman's definition of an algorithm I can give. Just a series of equations designed to come up with a certain solution. It's sophisticated math designed to, taking a certain amount of information and come up with predictive conclusions and outcomes and all kinds of things like that. Now, I could be wrong. If I am, please correct me if you want in the comments, if you end up watching this. But that's what an algorithm is. It's just a series of equations, very sophisticated equations, and a math problem. And when that math is done, it generates particular answers. And that's what AI is. It is a series of sophisticated equations. Like, they're going to say, like, digital networks and all this other stuff. It's still all just math, right? And from what we understand of consciousness, math cannot explain real consciousness, at least not yet, right? They've tried to reduce it down and say, well, it's just your brain is, the chemical inductions of your mind, because, when you stop, we don't see it, and we can't tell what happens on the other side. But, as science progresses, it's finding out that what consciousness is not something we can even explain with math or science to a sufficient enough level to say we have a full grasp or understanding of it. Now, the religious types, and I think the conspiracy or supernatural types will take us to see evidence of God or some supernatural power. Maybe, maybe not, right? One, I think that's one framing things in the wrong way, because science isn't a religion. Science is literally just a tool for better understanding how the world works, but it's not infallible. Hence things like eugenics and like all the weird racist studies that happened in the early 1900s, 1800s, which was proven later on to be completely false, right? But at the time, it was accepted scientific doctrine. But because science is constantly evolving, and it's not a religion, because religions do not evolve the same way science does, right? Religion isn't in the business of seeking out truth. Religious is in the business of telling you what they want the truth to be and adapting their narrative so that they're better accepted to society. Whereas science is like, we're not about telling you what the truth is from our own perspective. We're all about seeking out what the truth is for what it truly is. Now, there are bad actors in that, hence why I said like eugenics and all those really bad pseudosciences that came in the past, and there are bad pseudoscience like, flat earthers and things like that today. But those are the parts that I believe give science the bad rap that it shouldn't get. Because one, science is not a religion. It is not a system that you're supposed to live your life believing in a sense of this is how you should act or function. It is, if you understand how science works, you understand that science is a tool for better explaining how the world works at an intricate level. That's all it is for. It is not anything else. And because it's so good at doing this, some people have adopted it as a religion, but it doesn't really tell you how to live. It just tells you how it understands life works. Science is not here to tell you how to do things, except for figure out. It tells you how to figure things out, not how necessarily to do things or what the meaning of everything fucking is. That's just not what science is for. So if you can understand that, then you can dissociate the religious aspect of it and look at it a little bit more clearly. Now, where am I going with this? Because I feel like I'm rambling. Okay, so back to AI and all this other stuff. So how this means in religion is AI, even though it's going to be very hard for you to tell, it is not real and it is not alive in some way or sentient. It is in fact not sentient or ever will truly be alive. Why? One, because we don't really understand how to create real consciousness. And because we don't know how to understand and create real consciousness, we cannot replicate it. On the other hand, we're not even fully sure how AI comes up with its own decision making and things like that. And that's a great area that many people like, see, that's another example of consciousness. It doesn't necessarily mean that. All it means is that we don't understand how the math is working and spitting out the answer that it's spitting out, right? And if you've been following at least somewhat closely with how AI is progressing, it is able to be deceptive, it is able to be very convincing, and it's only going to get better. Because the more you use the math equation, the more you can refine it to be a better mimic. And I think that's all AI will ever be, is a mimic of real life, but never the real thing. And it's going to hit a glass ceiling of creativity at a point, because all AI has done now to be as creative and useful as it is now has used all the available data that humans have created and put on the internet. These AI companies have been very open about this, that how do they build their AIs on, the enormous amounts of endless data that has been poured into the internet and that is still being poured into the internet. And they use these equations to read all that text in order to create a program that is really good at imitating speech, language, and creating ideas, right? Because if you think about it, everything AI produces, even though a lot of AI has its own, like you can kind of see it now, like especially with like art, stylized art, like AI has a certain look to it. Even though it can mimic other art forms, when you actually look at it, you realize like that's most likely AI. For the initiated, I think there's a lot of people who are uninitiated and they honestly can't tell the difference. I know because I've seen a bunch of people do this. I was just watching a video the other day of a gentleman. Clearly the picture was an AI picture of like a large Egyptian head, and you can see like these small people. And when you look at the picture, you can tell like, no, this is AI. You can tell by like how the textures line up and how everything mixes. Like it is very good, but it is not real. Like this is not a picture. It almost looks photoshopped, which is indeed a good indication of it possibly being AI, at least today. 10, 20 years ago, it would have just probably been seen as a Photoshop photo, but Photoshop is now AI, for lack of a better term, right? So what's happening here is we're making really, AI artificial intelligence, and it's true, it is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, like its name says, means that it is artificial. It is not real. It is not conscious. And because it is artificial, it'll never be able to, at least right now, and like I said, I could be wrong. I haven't said that before, but I'll say it now. I could be wrong. This is just my personal take on this. But from my understanding of how they create AI, how AI functions, and it will never be to the level of capability of creativity that a human will be at. Now, I think that comes with a caveat, because as human beings, we've been around for a long time and we keep throwing information in. I think that AI is going to get to a place where it can be very predictive, because when you have, all the data on the internet fed into these machines, they learn everything. It is a database that is predictive in other sense. And the database is never ending. It encompasses everything that ever has been put on the internet and everything that will be put on the internet. And based upon that information, it's understanding the patterns of how humans think in a synthetic way. It is learning how to mimic words and mimic sentences, art, everything. It can duplicate it all. Why? Because, music is formulaic. Art to a certain degree is formulaic. Innovation to a certain degree is formulaic. There is formula behind everything, right? Some of it's harder to spot than other things, but there's enough of a hard-coded structure to certain things and how they're done that you can artificially simulate those things to a very high degree. But those sparks of left field innovation, those ideas that come completely contradictory, or things like that are, well known in human nature, that like it makes no sense, and where did they get that from? But they got it and they're able to use it. I don't believe AI is going to ever be able to duplicate those particular things, right? Now, that being said, AI never being a thing, then it goes, okay, what does this mean for our future? Well, who runs these AI companies? Let's start looking into these people. Like, one of the co-founders of Palantir, which has been in the news a lot lately, Peter Thiel. And unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the CEO, but I've watched a couple interviews from this guy. And for lack of a better term, it's kind of alarming the type of personality that's in charge of, what is going to be, because of this big, beautiful bill and some executive orders, the largest surveillance enterprise and systems ever created, also run with AI, to pretty much run a country and eventually the world if these people have their way. And I see a problem. And I'm predicting now, before I go into any detail, what that problem will be. If companies like Palantir, OpenAI, I can't really say for DeepSeek because I'm not as familiar with, the CEOs of these Chinese companies, but at least from the ones that are very outspoken on the Western side, like, Meta, OpenAI, Grok, and from their own admittance, even though I think they do it unwillingly because they think that most people are stupid, that if they get their way, not only will most people not be able to properly think for themselves, but that the ones that are properly able to think for themselves are going to be heavily scrutinized, possibly unalived, outcasted from society, in prison. All those things can happen to someone who might, not even because they're trying to be evil or nefarious, but because they are a self-thinking person, go against the grain. That these men want a world where everything you do, every decision you make, every choice you make, every thought you have is regulated and controlled to some degree by AI. That everything you decide to do, instead of you just having the trust and faith in yourself to make a move and go out there and do something, that what you'll do is you're going to consult your AI first, and then if it tells you yay or nay, go and do it. Or I'm going to say I'll say and that all your education, everything you learn is going to come from an AI source. That it not necessarily will be taught to you by a teacher in a school or someone who may be able to educate you in a way to make you self-think. They want you heavily reliant on this. And I would say, why would they want you heavily reliant on AI? Well, control. And it kind of goes along with what's being passed in the laws today. Like this big beautiful bill cutting the budget for education, getting rid of the Department of Education. Not only does it mirror what the Yahtzees did back in the 1920s and 30s, but it's also troubling to think that we already were one of the worst countries for education, at least pre-college, that now you're going to do away with that. And what you're implementing is a singular religious focus, basically Christianity. And, if you listen to what some of these people are talking about, what they want to educate, it's kind of crazy. Like, blaming girls for men raping them because of what they wear, or, isolating people who are not of the same religion that you have to believe in Christianity, when, we historically know from their own writings, as flawed as they were, our forefathers did not build this world to be, at least the United States, I should say. They didn't create it or establish it in the way they did for it to become a one religious society or Christian society for that, right? They wanted religious autonomy, at least because why? They left England for that reason. Now, probably they were also kicked out. Historically, a lot of these people were Puritans. They weren't really liked in England, and they moved here. But again, a lot of these men weren't here for that purpose. A lot of these guys didn't establish everything they established for a U.S. government for that. So they can be looked up. Now, I know this will be disputed, but most of those people, when they dispute this, when you bring them on the facts and you show them the truth, they have nothing to say. And they usually result to insulting you or trying to change the subject. But it's still true. But what AI is doing, and it is already doing it at these early stages of what they're implementing, is it's got people, especially those who are I would say more so on the conservative right of religion, believing that this thing is going to be some kind of sign of savior, or they see it as the devil, like it's the mark of the beast. And what I'll say is, though not in a political sense, it very well could be both. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a pretty popular video of this guy, Peter Thiel, co-founder of Palantir, out there, and he's been asked, about the future of humanity. Does he want to see it progress? And this seems like a pretty straightforward question for anyone out there. Like, do you want humanity to live on? And you would think a gentleman who is pioneering technology that is hailed as something that's going to further mankind, help us ascend and be better and more productive, would not hesitate on saying, yes, I see humanity living into the future and being very successful. He can't even answer that question. He starts stuttering and uttering and this, that, the other, and cajoling. Now, most people brush this off. People who are, I would say, your AI stands, your conservative stands, are going to be like, it's not a big deal. He's some of those words. And I'm like, nah, it's not. It should be a huge red flag. Because this guy's in a position to control the lives of everyone, at least in the United States for a time being, if he gets his way unconditionally. And I don't think, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, racist or not, you want one man in control of your future, especially one where he's taking away your agency as a human being. And I think that's what AI is pretty much going to do within the next 20, 30 years. At first for Americans, and possibly for the rest of the world, because let's just be honest, if something like this is successful here, and we turn into a full authoritarian rule country, any other country that has its own aspirations of becoming that and can afford it is going to buy and implement that technology in their countries as well. Right? The CEO, again, I apologize, I can't remember his name, but you can look at the name. He's not the co-founder. He is a co-founder, but also he's the active CEO of Palantir. This man, if you've listened to some of his interviews, literally sounds like a comic book villain with the way he feels how his technology should be used and implemented in the world. Specifically for himself, talking about how he could torture and hurt and maim or kill people who are not in line with his personal and political beliefs, which, last time I checked, is the signs of authoritarianism and fascism. And it's funny because there's all these people out here now who are self-proclaimed fascists, and I wonder to myself, I'm like, who in their right mind would ever be a self-proclaimed fascist? If you understand what fascism is, even if it may be beneficial to you for a time, by its very nature, it will never be beneficial to you forever. It just won't. It can't be. Because it's not rooted in anything that's going to be beneficial. In the end, fascism all goes back to feeding that idea, which usually is only complimentary to the leader. And once that leader gets to a certain point, they start making decisions that compromise the people around them. Hence why all fascist dictatorships usually fall after a time. All empires fall, they never last, but especially fascist ones, they usually fall in a very violent and bloody way. But for some reason, in the year 2025, we have people openly praising and seeking a government like that, especially, which is weird, in a country that was founded primarily, even though it has a lot of racist history and past, it still was founded primarily to get away from fascism, get away from oligarchy, get away from authoritarianism. But somehow, hundreds of years later, we're facing it. It's practically here. And it's a problem. And what do I mean by, and again, I know I'm rambling, but I'm really not. I'm just going around the world with this. Because what you got to understand is AI is literally going to be the tool that fascism uses to rule uncontested for a very long time if people do not educate themselves and understand the ramifications of what's going on. Right? Now, the good side of this is, because most AI is open source right now, anybody can get in and create AI systems and use them for whatever they want. That's a gift and a curse, because the reality is that means that not only are you going to have to face people who are organized in government who want to use this technology for control, you're going to have bad actors and adjutants out there with the technical ability to create these programs and implement them for their own nefarious purposes. On top of, I would say, the even smaller group of people who really just want to use them for good. And the sad part is, the people who mainly want to use AI for good are only using AI for the good of themselves, not so much the good of humanity. There's an even smaller pool of people who are going to want to use AI to better help the entire world and keep it more egalitarian and end a lot of the problems that we're facing. That group is incredibly tiny and is not incredibly well funded or backed. What is incredibly well funded and well backed are the governments, especially America, that wants to use this technology for control, subordination, and all that other shit. And that should scare people. And the reason it should scare people is because in a world where you are not allowed to think for yourself and you are not allowed to learn without the aid of AI, you are very, very susceptible, more so than we are now, to being misinformed and indoctrinated into beliefs that not only are going to be harmful to yourself, but the people around you. Right? We already see it now with the rise of, Christian nationalism and the alt-right. These things, though not named that way, have always existed in one form or another in the world. And before AI and before algorithms and arguably before social media, even though it hadn't completely died, arguably it was dying out. And the reason being is because for a time period there, before the 2010s and all that other stuff, social media being what it was today, people kind of had this, even though we had cell phones and technology and all that shit, people had to interact with each other. Like, men and women had to go out and interact with each other. You could only hold on to your racism for so long when you could stay isolated and not actually go out there and interact with people. Because you had to. Were they still racist? Yeah, but they were outed a lot of times. And when that exposure came out, it caused them financial loss. So people were forced to change and rethink their values and realize, hey, that's probably not the way to go. But insert, and I wouldn't even say MySpace, I would say insert Facebook, insert Twitter, insert Snapchat, right? These second wave of social media, because it was pretty much just like MySpace and little things and forums back in the day, which were always around, the alt-right had their forums and they were on there, but it never took traction because, one, it wasn't commercialized. So it's like MySpace, you weren't really making money on MySpace. You became popular on MySpace and you could try to find a way to roll that into fame, but most people on MySpace weren't famous. Most people on MySpace, you may get popular, but if you were popular, it's because you were really attractive or you did something. But there was no endorsements behind it. There was no money. There was nobody backing you. It was like you either were good and people liked you, or you weren't. You either, and this is before the idea of content creation. This was like, but for lack of a better term, you either created good content either through whatever image of yourself and your lifestyle that you portrayed on social media, or you weren't. It didn't have anything to do with any type of algorithm backing you or pushing you into popularity. It was solely done by the people that viewed you and that you could personally draw to your page, right? By pretty much word of mouth, even on the internet, right? You weren't paying for ads. You couldn't pay for promotion. There was no commodified social media. In walks Facebook, in walks Twitter, and all these other companies, and I would even argue YouTube. And I would say YouTube is kind of at fault for this, even though I'm using this platform. But if you think about it, YouTube was kind of the first to monetize content creation in an effort to start sharing with their partners. Which on its face is not necessarily a bad thing. But again, when profit is introduced to an idea or a concept, ethics slowly, if not properly checked, start leaving, right? Because instead of you doing something because you want to, or creating something because you want to, or creating something because you want to be original or good, you're creating because you want to make a profit, right? Or even if you do want to do those things, there's a very large portion of the reason that you're creating this because you hope, even if it's an original idea that you want to do, that profit is going to be there. And then if you're successful, and if you're successful on a level that you're making a lot of money on this, then what happens is, instead of you creating to be creative, which isn't always going to be a hit, you're creating in order to maintain your income and your popularity, which now automatically changes your motivations. We've seen this on several occasions. We've seen this with a lot of different influencers and a lot of different people, and they've been caught and outed because, they may have started out on a good note, but, once they draw fame and fortune, they started selling out, they started doing nefarious things, and it started to come back and catch them in the butt. I'm pretty sure you can think of at least one or two content creators or streamers or whatever. And now, because this has been going on for so long, there are people who are getting in the game purely to make money. They don't care if their content is ethical or not. They don't care if their content sways people to do evil things or corrupts or manipulate their perceptions of reality in a warped sense of way that creates harm for themselves and the people around them. What they care about, as long as they're getting engagement and it's monetizable and they're making money. And why is that a problem, and why does that link back into AI? Well, because at least in America, the vast majority of people in America are consuming social media at varying amounts, and most of it is way too much. Unless you're one of the few people like myself who pretty much erased all their social media and pretty much only interacts with social media through other parties or research, and my only closest thing to real social media is YouTube. I don't really have anything else. That puts you in a place of vulnerability for nefarious intent and influence. And what I mean with that with AI, because you've seen it now, there's a rise in AI content creators, and they are making themselves look lifelike and very real. I remember a few months back, Facebook, Mark Zuck talking about Meta and how they're going to stop using their fact-checking technology, which was flawed to begin with, but at least there was a level of protection against nefarious intent, and start using content creators that they create themselves. Now, for average Americans, we don't really care about that because it's Meta, and for the most part, unless after a certain age, you're probably not messing with Facebook like that, at least as an American. But what people don't realize is America is very popular in third world countries. It is very often, in some other countries, the only source of news and information that they get from around the world, because they don't have the funds or the money or the reach to gather that information from any other source, right? The technology for cell phones has become so cheap and ubiquitous that you can live in a third world country and not have a roof over your head, but you can have a working phone with Wi-Fi. And you're going to be on Twitter, or you're going to be on Facebook, or any one of these apps, and that's where you're going to get 99% of the information about what's going on in the world. Now, when you think about who's running these companies, the images that they push, the politics that they believe in, and then you realize how vulnerable the rest of the world is to not only being brainwashed and manipulated into things, what happens when AI comes in? Every time you see AI, it is only getting better at mimicking intelligence and mimicking real life. There will be a point in time, I honestly believe this, and probably a lot sooner than people are anticipating, when AI is going to be able to create a video and you're not going to be able to distinguish between it and a real thing without knowing how to go in and read the files and understand that it's AI. And if you don't understand how to go in and look at that and realize it's a synthetic, that the people had enough integrity and due diligence enough to tell you this is artificially generated. And I don't doubt that there's going to be eventually some law passed that, maybe not in America, but somewhere, that's going to be like, hey, anything that's AI generated, there has to be somewhere on the screen, hey, this is artificial intelligence, it is not real. But by the time we get to that, the damage is already going to be done, right? Why? Because companies want to make money. And if a company can get away with selling you a lie and it generates profit, it's going to do it, especially an American company. Why? Because there hasn't been a single American company that has not done something to that extent before. And once AI steps in, if you think it was bad before, it's only going to get worse. Why? Because here's something I think some people think about, but I don't think I hear enough people talking about. What's to stop a government with AI technology wanting to silence its naysayers or its critiquers or those who are not 100% aligned with its ideological goals, political goals, and movements by simply using AI to either, one, frame them in some implication that they did not actually do, make them say things that they did not actually say, and use that to smear their image and get themselves turned against by their own constituents, or make them a pariah to society even though they have never done anything. And I say, if you think that's not going to happen, you just haven't been paying attention to the world. Because look at what they did to, if you're black, look at how much they talked about Martin Luther King. To this day, there are people who still think Martin Luther King was like a rebel rouser, an agitant. He was not good. He was an evil man because of the narrative that was pushed. And it's even more so in third world countries where they have limited access to the information of American history. And most of the time they get it, again, from places like Facebook or Twitter, which we know are not really good at being honest with the history and the truth to its people that watch it. So imagine what will happen when AI gets in, right? It is undisputed now, even without AI, that people are bold-faced lying to people about the things that they do. I was watching a clip the other day, again, of this was on YouTube, but it was YouTube from a news channel. It wasn't like a third party. And the woman on there, I believe she was like the head of commerce or had something to do with that. And she's talking about how proud they are of where the economy is going and how proud they are of like where we're heading and what's happening in the economy right now. But it's funny because juxtaposed to her on the screen in the same, but in another box, is what's going on with like the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500, and everything's down. And it's live. It's showing you where everything is and what's trending. So while this woman's bold-faced telling you things are going to get better and things are getting better, the math is really right there showing you that things are not getting better and most likely won't get better. But somehow people believe it. People think, no, this is real. And this is my problem with what's going on with AI, because AI is going to give an added level of validity and truth to the lies that people are already telling. And if you are not already educated, or if you're not savvy enough to spot it and understand it, or even, have the ability to question it and look into things for yourself, you're going to believe what they say and follow it like it's truth and law, when it could very well be a very bold-faced lie and dangerous to believe. And that's a problem. I know people are talking about this, but for some reason Americans, I don't know why we are not more up in arms about this. Why we are not more up in arms about our future being ruined because of some really dumb, greedy people, power-hungry people. I keep bringing up Peter Thiel because I've watched, I wouldn't say a lot, but I've watched enough videos of what this man has said for being in the position that he is and the future this man has to come about, that it's going to be problematic for people, especially black and brown people, or marginalized groups like LGBTQ people. What's crazy is this man is part of the LGBTQ people, but he's actively in support of political systems and regimes that are going to oppress not just black and brown or people of color, but also the LGBT community. And he's very much pushing for technology to do this. He said this in his own words, that technology is a better route than politics, that getting people to agree to ideas that they would never agree to, the only way to do that is in the use of technology. And that, I think, should ring a lot of bells. Now, if you don't believe me, just go look this stuff up. I can't give you the exact meeting he was, and I'm sorry for not having that because I'm making this video off the top of my head. I didn't write a script. I'm just thinking about things that I saw in the last couple of weeks and things that have been stewing on my mind. But I'm sure if you just look up Peter Thiel, you can go on YouTube, you can just go on Google, and just look up some of his speeches and listen to what this man's saying. It's going to be alarming if you understand the ramifications of where this man wants to go. He already is of the mind of, let's do away with people thinking for themselves and engaging in politics and using technology to manufacture consent for ideas that he is fully aware that no one in their right mind would ever agree to. What are those ideas? Well, part of it is getting rid of education. You know, he's got a contract with the government. The government's getting rid of education. They want everything. They want not just the war technology, not just the military, but everyday citizens to be completely ruled and regulated by AI that they control. Now, they haven't said it exactly like that, but if you listen to the vast majority of all these people in these big companies that are pushing for AI technology and people in the government, that is what they want. And it doesn't take much to understand, right? Why would you destroy the Department of Education knowing how bad education is here, but then pushing for AI? Why? Because you want people to be taught by AI, right? That's not ethical. Now, am I saying you can't learn from that? Wrong. I think that AI could be a very good tool for education. But what are you being educated on? Are you being educated on the truth? Like actual history, not doctored history? Actual facts, not manipulated or doctored facts? Or are you being taught a narrow view of the world, a agenda for complete domination and control by the wealthy? And I think that's the thing. The people at the top realize this is their best shot for total domination of the poor. They're like, if we can get them dumb enough and blind enough that they're completely dependent upon us, then we can control them indefinitely because they're not going to know enough to fight back. And here's the funny part. This is basically what they did to slaves. They're just using technology now to do it to not just black and brown people, but to all people who are not wealthy. Which is why you have people now, like I've been seeing a lot on the internet, like, oh, you know, especially like white people turning their mind, realizing what black people are saying has been true their whole lives because they're now starting to feel some of that. They're now starting to feel what black people have been feeling, especially economically, you know, and socially. But they don't understand how far this can go and how far these people in power want to take it. Right? And that's what's coming. And it should scare you. Imagine a world where you don't go to school anymore because things like Neuralink. Now, they've progressed it, like, I remember years ago, like I'm talking 2016, 17, 18. I remember, I think it was in that time frame, I remember Elon Musk was just starting up, you know, Neuralink, talking about, you know, hey, imagine being able to convey ideas to a person and you don't have to talk. Like, you can just widely transmit that. And sci-fi has done a very good job of, like, propagating the idea of, like, integrating both technology being a wonderful idea for humanity and that it's our best way to evolve as a species while we're maintaining our humanity and not going, you know, the way of the dodo. And because they framed it like that, they got everybody on board, or most people on board, without them really thinking about the ramifications. It's easy to sell people on an idea when all you do is show them the possible upsides and not the inherent downsides that are not only can happen, but most likely will happen if we are not responsible enough and diligent enough as human beings to watch, monitor, and regulate this thing. And what do I mean by that? Okay. So back to, imagine a world where you're born. When you're born, you get your first, for lack of a better term, because I don't necessarily think it's going to be Neuralink. It'll probably be its ancestor or like its descendant, and it may still be, it may whoever, but something along the line or Neuralink being implanted into your mind. A technological device that integrates with your brain into your motor functions, your thought processes, where you store information and memory. Now, you don't go to school. Why? Because when you're born, they put that in your brain, and now everything they want you to know is fed into you. Now, I don't say everything you need to know, because I don't honestly believe these people are going to give you all the information that you may personally need, because if they give you all the information that you may need, some of the information may be against them. And these companies are not in the business of losing power or money, so they're not going to want to tell you the whole truth. They're always going to give you the truth that is going to be complementary to them staying in power and you giving them money and you supporting them. So imagine being in a world, and I do believe, not like I said, we can't predict the future, anything can happen, but this is the world that I honestly believe these people are. You're born as a child. When you come out the womb, you are given a Neuralink-like device, probably way more sophisticated than what they have now, that is invasively or non-invasively implemented into your brain. Maybe there's other ones. And this is how you learn, this is how you speak, this is it. Basically, taking a cell phone technology and computer technology and putting a little computer in your brain that is going to help regulate your thoughts and everything else. So they're going to take a human being, autonomous human being, and because we learn at such a slow pace, they're going to speed that up by force feeding you knowledge. Now, on the surface, it sounds great because, yeah, if I have a digital device in my brain, it means I can download information. If I want to learn a skill, I can go and look up the program and download that skill or whatever. If I want to make a phone call, it's no longer making a phone call. I think of who I want to talk to, and I can wirelessly communicate with them from my brain. All ups. They all sound great. But here's the other side. Depending on how it's integrated into you, which I'm pretty sure this is what they're pushing for, that means that they can influence your memories, they can influence your thoughts without you knowing. And it's funny because I don't know how many of y'all are nerds or how many of y'all like cartoons. Back in the day, some of y'all might not be familiar. There was a cartoon called Futurama. And there's an episode, one of the first episodes for that show that ever came out, and it shows the main character Fry. He's sleeping, but he's dreaming, and in his dreams he's getting commercials, right? Now, this sounded like a funny gag, and this is well before AI was at the level it is today, and it's almost prophetic, because imagine that. Name one thing you can do today online where you don't see ads unless you pay to not see ads. Social media is full of advertisements. The only way you don't see those advertisements, for most of them, if they even allow you to not see advertisements, is by paying a fee to eliminate the advertisements. Facebook. And I don't even think Facebook, you can pay to get rid of the advertisements. They're just there. It might be an option, but you have to pay for it. Google, Instagram, YouTube. If you want no ads, you have to pay for no ads. Spotify, you don't want to see ads, you have to pay extra for no ads. Imagine being in a world where you're mandated, it's almost like insurance in a way, where you can't drive a car unless you get insurance, but if you get into an accident or some kind of incident where the purpose of what insurance was created for, that you lose it, it's almost like that. It's like coming into a world where you're forced to be implemented with technology that they can now shove ideas and data into your brain, and probably the only way that you're going to not be able to get that is you're going to have to pay a fee to not be influenced. And I'm pretty sure that fee is only going to be affordable by those who have the money to do that, which, and the way they're trying to make it, are going to be legacied in. Because in a world where no one is self-taught, there's no access to the information unless you're at an affluent level, you're not going to generate a bunch of new entrepreneurs in the world. You're not going to generate a bunch of new thinkers. You're not going to generate a lot of autonomy in the world. What you're generating is
a captive audience of people who are going to have to work and toil to survive while being bombarded in their own brains with artificial intelligence and algorithms and ads and services and ideas, which are regulated by people who already don't see you on an equal level because they're so wealthy, they don't live in the same reality that we live in. They don't interact with the world on the same way that we interact in the world because they don't have to. But they're going to be in control of your thoughts. They're going to know how you think. They're going to know what you do. So imagine living in a world where you have literally no autonomy, not even in your own head. And the starts of that, again, are Palantir. Now, Palantir is not pioneering, at least not right now, the technology that they can implant in your brain, but they are pioneering AI technology that is omnipotent in its surveillance capabilities, to the point where they're going to be able to tell who you are and identify you accurately, not even by seeing your face, but by watching how you walk, seeing how you move. So you can be completely covered up. Your face can be hidden, you can alter your voice. But just by if a camera sees how your body moves, your proportions, and those things, they'll be able to accurately identify you as who you are. With what's going on in England with their Internet Safety Act, if you look into it, it's very authoritarian. And if you understand where that goes to, and I know they're probably like, we're going to save kids from the internet, but they're not really in it to save kids from the internet. They're in it to keep people from speaking their perfect minds. And I get it. Free speech means that anyone can say whatever the fuck they want to say, whether it goes along with you or not. And I understand that's problematic. But in order to not have authoritarianism, you need to allow people to say what they want to say. Now, what does that mean? Free speech, again, for the people in the back, and I haven't said this before, but many other people have said it, but I'm sure you've heard it from other people. Free speech does not mean you're free of consequences. It means you're free of political persecution from the government and the country you live in for speaking your mind, whether it is, acceptable or not. That does not mean that you can be a bigot or anything like that, and people are not going to be like, we don't want to work with you, we don't want to spend money with you, we don't want to do anything. Because these people aren't government. They're not official. Regular people can literally be like, if you want to be a racist, bigoted asshole, I am not going to spend my money with you. I am not going to be your friend. And that's perfectly legal, because that's also free speech, right? They are free to not speak with you. Still free speech. All it means is you can be a racist and the government cannot come back and attack you for that. Now, it does not mean that you can act on your racism in a way that's going to be harmful to other people. And here's where things get crazy. Because if your government is racist or authoritarian, then they run the rules. They run the laws. And what happens is when they go out and want to be like, if you're poor, we're just going to arrest you. Or if you're black or brown, or if you're, for lack of a better term, a special needs, well, I shouldn't say that. I'll just say special needs. And that could be, physically impaired, mentally impaired, emotionally impaired. We don't like you, we're going to remove you. And what we're going to do is we can get people on our side a lot easier because we can force feed them the information that they'll believe in order for them to get on our side. We already see things like this happening now. It's basically what's going on social media and with all these platforms like Rumble and Truth Social, which are geared to certain political ideologies and people who are aligned with that. And it's forced, and let's be honest, this is not just on the right, it's on the right and the left. Both sides are doing this. Though I will say that on the right side, it is going to be, if I'm being honest, they're winning right now in this. Their outcomes are going to be far more violent, far more destructive, and far more dangerous for everyday people than the left would be. By a large margin. Anyone who's not paying attention and doesn't grasp this concept, you're lying to yourself, or you're a full on racist and bigot, because they do not want anyone but Caucasian males in any particular place of power or status. And that's problematic for the world because they shouldn't be. The world doesn't consist of only white males. And I know a lot of people hear this and they go, "Oh no, you're just." I was like, "Listen, man, I'm telling you what I've heard and saw these people say, right?" And if you don't believe me, the great thing about the internet is you can honestly just Google these people and listen to the words coming out of their mouths, read the articles that they write, and they're telling you this. They may not be using the exact words, but their meanings are the same. And you can dispute me, but it's like, that's the wonderful part. All I gotta do is look it up on Google. But that is going to go away. It's funny. The government literally just erased a part of the Constitution, the part that, educates people on habeas corpus, the right to legal protections and being, going through due process. Why? Because they're in the process of not doing that to people. They're in the process of deporting people illegally without due process, without habeas corpus, right? They deleted it. Why? Because they understand that people know they can look that information up and they can use that to combat these things in court. And it's crazy because if you think AI is not tied into this and what it means to the future, if you don't see that, you're setting yourself up for failure. Again, these people want to completely erase your ability to think for yourself, completely erase your ability to self-educate. They want you completely dependent on AI, and that's what they want you to be dependent on because that's how they're going to be able to rule you. Because they realize is if you're educated in the truth, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you know the real history, not just some version of it, but the actual black and white history of the world, if you understand what, if you fully were informed of what these people actually do, what they actually believe, where they want to go, you would fight it. Any rational person would be like, no, this is not how I want to go, this isn't how I want to live. So I was just waving to a friend. I'm at the gym and I'm trying to record this video before I go in. But yeah, you would never agree to this. No one in their right mind would ever rationally agree to what these people actually want. And they realized that the only way for that to work, again, Peter Thiel, was using technology. And that's where we're headed. Surveillance far beyond what you thought it was like in China. We're talking Big Brother. We're talking 1984 type shit. For those who have read the book or seen that movie. Like, we're talking that, but in reality. Where your thoughts are known. You can't even have a private thought anymore. You can't think for yourself anymore. And I don't think the people on the right understand that that's what they're pushing for because of their racism, their ignorance, their hate is allowing that to happen. And they think, well, it won't happen to me. And I was like, you're going to sign up willingly to this because they're telling you what you want to hear. But if you think that it's going to benefit you, in the long run, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. It won't. Because you want to hear we're getting rid of immigrants, you're going to be one of the first people to sign up to get that implant in your brain. Because you want to hear it's going to push, conservative ideas and agendas, you're going to be the first person to sign up for that AI school teacher because you want your son to be taught that propaganda. Not realizing that that's going to be destructive to you too. Because guess what? What happens if, and I say if, but possibly when, these people are successful and say they literally are able to remove or imprison all the quote-unquote undesirables of America as far as black and brown, indigenous, people of color folks, right? You know what's left to exploit are the poor white people, right? The poor white MAGAs, the poor Indian MAGAs or Asian MAGAs, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not white. Now, they'll use you because they understand that, hey, your culture and what you drive for in your education for technology and growth is useful to them now. And I find this amazing because they are like, it's outed that these people used minorities to push their agenda. And minorities still get on board and go, use me, because it won't happen to me. But then they're finding out, oh shit, it's happening to me. And some of them still double down on it. Because they were raised in a culture to believe it's true and there's the way to live. Now, what happens when there's no alternative? There's no pushback or kickback because you're no longer allowed to think for yourself. What happens when they start policing your thoughts? If you don't think that's coming, it's coming. If we don't do something about it. And I'm making this message not just to black folks, but to anyone who is rational, who can see things on a macro level, who can see all the pieces falling together for that very future. I was like, what do you think is going to happen when no one can work because AI is doing the jobs? When the robotic technology is enough for that, even when it's a labor job, they can put an AI into a robot to do those jobs. So, and that's what they're doing. I mean, China just unveiled a $6,000 robot that is fully functional. How much does it cost annually to pay and insure a human worker in a basic job? It's multiple times more expensive than $6,000 of a one-time purchase. And I'm sure there's maintenance costs on the robots, and that's going to vary depending on what type of work it's doing and all this other shit. But this is real. This is not. It's not sci-fi anymore. It's not conspiracy anymore. This robot exists. It is being advertised, and Elon Musk and Boston Dynamics and all these other robotics companies are not very far behind. Right? Now, how are they selling you these robots? Oh, companionship. They can help you and do this other things, which they can. But they're not telling you that's not what they have the intentions to use these for. Now, I can't necessarily say that's what China wants to do, but it wouldn't surprise me because let's just be honest. If they can sell you on a utopia where you're going to be safe and not have to work, most people will get on board with that. That's a sad truth. Especially if it's like they're going to take care of all the things that you don't want to deal with. Laziness will allow you to give up your autonomy. Fear will allow you and cause you to give up your autonomy, give up your freedom, give up your own mind in order to have some sense of security and prosperity in your life. We live in a world now, even though by the numbers, people are less poor than they've ever been. People are arguably overall smarter than they've ever been. But there's still a lot of fear. There's still a lot of poverty in the world, and it's growing. There's a lot of wars going on. What people don't realize is we're in the beginning stages of a global World War III. You know, Ukraine is fighting. There's a war in Sudan, which literally is not getting any coverage. It's anything anyone ever talks about literally is Ukraine and Russia and China possibly attacking, right? And then you've got the war that happened between Pakistan and India, and you know who started all that shit? It wasn't even Pakistan and India. It was freaking Britain. When Britain was leaving, they separated that by religions, by Muslim and the Hindu and their religions, and now they beef. But historically, they were all one country before England came in and said, we're just going to start fucking shit up. And why did England do that? Because England realized we can't hold you the way we used to because the world's changing. The world does not like authoritarian empires anymore. But we can economically tie you to our will by giving you an enemy to fight. Or we can fund both sides or one side, and you're going to keep giving us money in order to support your defense of that. That's what they did to Africa. That's what they did to Asia. Right? And this isn't fantasy. This isn't conspiracy. This is well-documented truth. All it takes you doing is picking up a history book and reading it. Or Googling it. It's all out there. So, again, it goes right back into AI. AI is going to be the tool of the future that facilitates division, that facilitates oligarchy, that facilitates corporate feudalism, right? Think about it. You already have some of these billionaires wanting to build their own towns. Elon Musk wants to build his own city that's centered around like Tesla and all this other shit. That's corporate feudalism. When everyone in that town has to work and then you run it. It's not a town where the people came together and said, we want to build a town here. It's a company that came and said, I'm going to build a town here. Everything that is done in this town is going to be for the betterment of the company and the CEOs and the board members at the top, right? And it's not like historically companies have not done this before, because they definitely have. And they even got to the point where they weren't even paying their employees with real money. They made up their own money that could only be used in those towns. And historically, that was being used to oppress people. Just look it up. So what happens when they do that now in the future? Now, not only do they have your mind, because they can now patrol your brain, even without Neuralink, because so many people are so attached to this, so attached to the technology. Everything they do, they have to tweet where they go, they have to tweet or message, or, even not tweet or Facebook or whatever. They have to post where they are, what they're doing, who they're hanging with, their thoughts on everything, their aspirations, their dreams. Everything they want, they do it online, right? Everything. And I'm going to say they, I say we, because I'm included. I mean, I'm literally here making a video, talking to people on YouTube. And I'll be honest, you can look it up. I have had in the past social media. But if you look at me now, I have no active social media accounts. I don't have a Twitter, I don't have a Facebook, I don't have a LinkedIn. And I should say I might have a LinkedIn because LinkedIn was attached to Facebook, but I deleted my Facebook. So I don't know if that deleted my LinkedIn. But it's been, I want to say, close to a year, if not more. I haven't had any social media. I completely deleted all of it, right? But most people still are on there. But guess what? Even though I deleted all my social media, I still use my phone. I still watch YouTube. If I need to look something up, I still Google it, because it's easier than going to a library or picking up a book. I can just ask it a question and it's going to bring it to me. So you don't think they're still building a profile on myself? I'm included. We are all included, right? Now, the most logical solution, but probably the most unattainable, is cutting off your need of technology. But that is just not really feasible in the world that we live in, right? Why? Because most jobs, you need a cell phone and you need access to interact to even do your job at basic levels, right? To create a resume, most people aren't doing that on a typewriter. You're using a laptop. You're sending your email into a work a job finder of some time, or you're applying online for your job. So everything you do, even just to acquire work or even to do freelance work, is done online. And increasingly, that's where people are making their money now. Things like Fiverr. If you think all that information is not being collected by AI and these companies to use it against you, you're fooling yourself. Yes, they can, and it very well should be used to help you, but it is not going to be used for that. I guarantee you. What they will do is, on the surface, everything's going to be like, well, this will make your life easier. This is going to make it more convenient. This is going to help you be smarter. But underlying, what they're doing is, while they're giving you that face value help, they're collecting data, they're learning from all this, and they're advising a plan to better manipulate your thoughts and surveil your thoughts, better manipulate your actions and surveil your actions, and get you to do what they want you to do. Right? Because when you live in a world where you can't make money without interacting with that thing, you're outcast from society. Where do you go? Right? What do you do? And what do you do if that happens to end up becoming what the whole world works like? Right? You're going to have the people at the top who run all that. You're going to have the people in the middle who are pretty much slaves to this system at varying levels. You're going to have some people that are, they're slaves to the system, but they're going to live better than the people at the bottom. And here's the funny part. Once the technology gets to a point where you don't need people to do that work, what happens to all those people? And it's weird because I know sci-fi has kind of been preaching this idea for a long time. So we're kind of, as human beings, we've been desensitized to it. I mean, movies like The Terminator and The Matrix, or, video games like Call of Duty and things like that, Modern Warfare, like the one where they're in the future, and, we're fighting alongside alien like humanoid-made robots and things like that. It's funny because those things are very predictive of where we're going, but they've been distributed and implemented to us to view and watch in a way that we don't think it's going to happen, and we've been desensitized to it because we're like, nah, we'll be fine, humans will make this. And that says, in my mind, I'm like, some might, but most won't. Right? War is profitable for people at the top. Disinformation is profitable for people at the top. Government manipulation, suppressing of information is profitable for the people at the top. And we're seeing right now with things like, Mr. Epstein and what's going on with that, and his past linked to our current president and the people inside, that they're doing everything to stall and make people forget and just normalize this. And that is incredibly dangerous for our future. For anyone that has a child, now I personally don't have kids. I don't know if I'll ever have kids. I'm not sure if I want kids. I'm single right now, so if I ever did, the only way I would want kids is if I met the right person that I believe that we not only would stay together, but be in a, and I don't think there's anything like perfection, but we would not only stay together, but be able to maintain such a high level of a healthy relationship, not only with ourselves, but with our children, that we could do it successfully. I don't want to have kids just to have kids. I think that is dumb. I think if you have children, it is your responsibility as a human to be able to make the best human being out of your kids that you can be. And that does not mean forcing them to live exactly how you want them to live, but by teaching them how to look at the world and view the world so that when they become who they're supposed to be, they can do that in the best way possible, not just for themselves, but that they're contributing to humankind in a better way. And that may not mean that they're the leader of something. It may mean that they're doing a regular job, but when it comes time to vote, they vote the right way, not for just their own personal interest, but for the world. Or even if they are voting for their personal interest, and their personal interests won't just benefit them, but benefit everyone else positively too. Or that when they go looking for work, they're choosing jobs that better benefit themselves. When they're making decisions in their life, they're not being necessarily just selfish. They're thinking about themselves, but they're understanding the ramifications of it. They're thought-driven people, ethically driven people. That is what I think it means to be a parent. It is your job to create the most ethically thinking, thought-driven, capable person who has great discernment. And it's not just about financial and material success, but being human, being able to see the importance of not just themselves in the world, but the other people who may be different in the world, and accepting that that's all valid and necessary. Now, I know that sounds very idealized, but I think that's just my personal belief. That's what I think that should be. And another reason I don't have kids is because I know I'm not 100% there yet. I don't have that mate or that person in my life, that woman in my life that I believe is on a level. I'm still growing as a person myself, even though I'm 42. And I know a lot of people feel like once you get to a certain age, you stop growing, but that's not true. We're changing constantly, whether you want to believe it or not. So you just have to be diligent enough to recognize that, hey, I'm changing, and I need to understand where I'm changing and how I'm changing. Is that good or bad? So I'm in that process. And then the last part for me is being in a financial situation where not so much that I can pamper my children and give them everything they want, but knowing that I can provide security, outlets, options, and space for them to grow into who they're supposed to be, to think for themselves, to learn and make mistakes without dire consequences to your life and future, unless warranted, right? Where it's like, because guess what? I've said it to many people that I don't think children are much different from adults. The only difference between a child and adults is experience, but their brains are just as capable. And how do we know this? Because in the past, most of our rulers were young people. Because before we got our technology and our science to the place where it is now, where people commonly live past 40 years old, for the vast majority of life, most people didn't live beyond 30. Right? Most people didn't live beyond 30 or 40 years old. And you either died because of illness or war or, you're being preyed upon by, another person or animal. So those things were very prominent in killing people well before their old age, right? Things like diseases, like we just now understand that poor dental hygiene increases your chances of heart attack, strokes, and disease. So just think, for years and years and years, we didn't even have really, really good dental hygiene. Like, people didn't brush their teeth all the time, never mind shower, especially in European countries, let alone the rest of the world, right? So these things brought about plagues and illness and sickness. We now live in a time where those technologies are mitigated, so people are living longer. Even though people are still dying, depending on where you live, at a very alarming rate, we're still living longer, right? But again, so I know I'm going all over the place, but again, that's why I'm saying, children, their brains are just as capable as an adult brain. The only difference is they don't have experience, so they're pretty much a blank slate that's just acting out what they feel and what they experience. So I feel, as a parent, as an adult, and this is my belief, that your job should be to properly educate your child on the realities of the world, not just your perceived realities of the world, but the true realities of the world, to give them the tools to best navigate the world for themselves, to get the best outcome for themselves that they can possibly get. And not just being selfish and money driven, but also to be like living in a way that is in as much harmony as they can be with their society around them, without giving up all their autonomy, but also with nature, because we need it to live. Our technology's not there yet where we can live on a giant planet that doesn't have, animals and all that other shit. We still need ecosystems to survive, even as human beings, even though we're doing our damnedest to seem to end that possibility and destroy that, which makes utterly no sense to me. I think there's a term for it, accelerationists, people that believe the world needs to end or come to some level of destruction so they can rebuild it, and I think that's actually fucking stupid. But because these people tend to be very rich, snobby assholes who don't live in reality, there's not much a regular old dude like myself can do about that, other than, get online and make a video. Hopefully enough people hear it and start asking questions on their own and start figuring shit out. But again, long tangent to go back to saying, go back around to my point about AI. AI should be the greatest tool humanity has ever made to date for the advancement of our species as a whole. But what it's most likely going to turn into, if we as people, not just one race, not just white or black or Asian or Latino, but as humans all together, if we as humans, or enough of us humans, do not get together and understand that, hey, we need to have a greater overall understanding of AI, way better than we have now. So that it's not just people at the top who have a fundamental, really good understanding of it, but everyday people through proper education. But also that we need to put really good guardrails in for where AI can go wrong, so that we can prevent that from causing some serious problems. Because it seems like, from what they said, what they've tweeted, and what they've done, especially people like Elon, these people want to live out some weird ass fantasy that they saw from a video game, and they want to make that a reality. And that's a problem. I think I've told a couple of this before. I was like, for people that play games or into gaming, look into Cyberpunk 2077, read the lore, pay attention to the lore, play through the game. Now, the main story is not what you need to focus on, it's the lore. And what I mean is how the corporations and how the America that is established, how it works, how it functions, the law, the government, everything. And the reason being is because the creator of that video game, or the part of the creators of that video game, created a board game. And they started this by using the political landscape and the history and the facts of the real world going on from the 1980s back, predicting a future that could come about to the future. Now, Cyberpunk is not a direct translation of what's going on in the world now, but when you understand that people like Elon were involved, one of his baby mamas, Grimes, is actually a live character in the game. And once you look at the law, the progress, the ideologies of the government, the political systems, even the corporations there, and what they want for the world, and what real life corporations like Elon Musk's and Peter Thiel's Palantir and a couple of other OpenAI and all these other people are doing, it is very, very uncannily similar. And the funny thing is, these people have been more vocal about these things after that game came out than before. Now, could this be a conspiracy theory? Maybe yeah or nay. But the reason I say no is because a CEO literally actively pushing certain agendas was actively in hand part of funding and promoting that game being made. And if you understand how Elon works to a certain degree, he likes to kind of foreshadow things and other things of where he's going in the world. One being that game. And though the video game paints a very beautiful picture, when you look at it and you go beyond the eye candy, it is extraordinarily dystopian, right? It is a worst case scenario for have and have nots. And we're already kind of there. You know, healthcare in that video game is, if you can't afford it, you don't get it, right? Like, at all. And it's pretty barbaric how they do things. Like, there's this company called Trauma Team. And basically, what they do is, if you have enough money, you either get no medical treatment or you get the best medical treatment at an exorbitant price. We're talking millions for like the best tier, right? Which pretty much happens in the world today. If you're a billionaire, you don't need to have insurance because you're a billionaire. But because you're a billionaire, you can afford the best healthcare known to man. So you can damn near pretty much overcome or cure pretty much almost any ailment or disease and regain full functionality of your body. Unless it's something that the technology and science just isn't there for you, right? Whereas if you're a regular plain Joe, a person like, you know, me, or anyone else for that matter, that, you know, is a working stiff trying to make it their ends meet and live their life, you don't have access to that. Even with full coverage insurance, you don't. You just won't. Why? Because you're not wealthy enough to have access to that. But in this game, it takes a step further because they're predicting a future where it's like, you know, even with your augmentations, there's a thing going on. Because in this game, they talk about people being augmented, you know, cybernetic limbs and implants. And this brings it back to AI and like Neuralink and Palantir. I was like, AI exists and it's a threat. Not all of them, but some are. You know, they literally cordoned off the internet, which is actively happening today. They're cordoning off the internet through laws so that the free passage of information amongst the citizens of any country or world is heavily regulated by the governments. They literally, there's a corporation that's supposed to be the middle ground in this called NetWatch, but they aren't. Things like the FCC and all these other people, because when we find out they're really not the middle ground, they're really there to facilitate the agendas of corporations and people with a lot of money. They, like, again with Trauma Team, depending on how much money you get the best access to care. Then you have these companies that make technology, and how they work interpersonally with that is dystopian. They're run like empires. They're run like kings at the top. And that's a big thing going on right now with how these CEOs are wanting to portray themselves as, you know, kings and rulers of serfdoms. Because, again, I apologize, because I didn't write this down. This is just me spitting on top of my head off of what I've observed, you know, beyond when the election passed, but just it's been ramped up since Trump's become president, because this has been the biggest step towards that type of direction to date. But again, these people run it all, and they want to use this technology to consolidate and hold on to that power while stripping you of your autonomy completely. You're basically going to be a flesh-made robot for these people to do with as they please, you know. And unfortunately, a lot of that's pretty nefarious, as we can tell based upon what's going on with the whole Epstein thing and the Epstein files. I mean, it was always kind of a well-known secret by a lot of people that the wealthy, you know, are really into young women, into human trafficking, into doing a lot of crazy shit. There are countless stories of predatory wealthy people out there going underground to, you know, satisfy and live their darkest desires. A lot of them sexual, with underage, disadvantaged women and boys. Never mind the things like, killing people or hunting people, like that movie Hostel, which almost in a way told you what people were doing in a stylized way and desensitized us or made it seem as a conspiracy so we don't believe it. And again, it's just a manipulation of what's really going on. It's art imitating life, and then life going, oh, it can't be real because it was in a movie, or people taking the movie literally and thinking that's the only way this thing happens or that's exactly how it works, and it's just not true. So I'm getting on about an hour and a half here. I've been rambling. And all I really want to say, if you take anything from this, is listen, ladies and gentlemen, especially my black folks, if there's any black folks that watch this, we need to be very diligent about how we interact with technology. And not out of a fear of the feds coming to get you individually, but because I understand people out here are making money for the bag. But your need for that bag may take your life away because you put money over common sense and over decency. Because you're so blinded by the wealth that you can't see the ramifications of what you're doing. And specifically black content creators, because there seems to be this growing trend of black content creators who are minstreling, for lack of a better term, and cooning for clout. Like the twins, I guess the Haas twins, and some other creators out here who are sowing strife in the black community for white views and profit on YouTube. Not realizing that they are not safe. Because at the end of the day, you are wealthy to the common man. You are not wealthy at all to the people in power of the things that you're using for your own personal gain. And you never will be. Because why? You didn't create these systems, you're using them systems for your wealth. There's not one person, the most successful person on YouTube is nowhere near as wealthy or as politically powerful as the owners of YouTube or the people creating these technology systems. Yes, they can be if they use that technology right, but the sad part is most of the most powerful ones are in line with the other people who are going to use this thing nefarious. And the black folks that are in line with this, for lack of a better term, like for the best example is the Haas twins, they gotta get called out right now, is that they honestly have either been brainwashed or ignorant to the fact that they're contributing to their own downfall. The short term, yeah, they've got clout and they've got popularity on the internet and it's making them very wealthy. But in the long term, it most likely is going to mean that one day, if we're not careful, they can be rounded up like anyone else and put into a concentration camp or a death camp or outright murdered. Why? Because they're not white and they're not part of the ultra wealthy in this world. They are wealthy, but not the ultra wealthy. And there's a big difference between someone with a few million in the bank and a person with hundreds of billions in the bank, verging on trillions, right? And it's like, you don't have to be a math whiz to understand that millions is nowhere close to billions or trillions. A person with $100 million does not need to work again for the rest of their life, even if they're not that smart with their money and buy whatever they want, as long as they're not buying ridiculously wealthy shit. And they will never go broke. And even then, they are only a fraction of the wealth of a person with $1 billion, let alone $100 billion. And last time I checked, the wealthiest have several hundreds of billions of dollars. It is the type of money that if you don't know better, that person is damn near a god to the people under them. Which brings me back again to problems with AI and where we're headed. Because a person who's deluded or put into a delusional state by the level of wealth they've been able to attain, most likely nefariously for these uber rich people because they've all been exposed for some type of corruption. And because you're on that level of wealth, one, the people under you, none of them are going to be honest with you to your face in the same room with you out of fear of losing their position and their wealth and their security. So no one's going to tell you the truth even when it's a bad idea. Two, when they do interact with a person who is nowhere near their level of wealth or status, they're mostly employees. And they're not interacting with those people on a basis of they actually care what that person has to say, they see that person as a person who is just a cog in the wheel to serve the whims of them. So they're not even going to, the person one is most likely never going to have the opportunity to even voice those opinions unrestricted at any well to that person. But even if they did, it pretty much would mean their life is officially over. Especially if that person, especially if that person really hates him or doesn't like him. And that could mean financially or literally detriment to your life. You could be killed. And that is a sad truth and reality. And people don't want to accept it. At least some people don't want to accept it because they still have it in their minds that if they kiss up to this shit, they can one time get there. And that's just not how it works. These people are going to be controlling the technology that will run every aspect of your life. Aspects of your lives that you never once thought you were anyone outside of yourself was capable of running. Once you start putting the technology in your body, and if you don't think it's coming, give it 30 years. We already have people who have got it in their bodies because it's helping them be better. And that's where it starts. You make some people who are paraplegic walk again. You make some people blind see again. You make someone with some type of mental impairment sane again. What happens is the technology evolves and you get better control over that person, then the veil starts lifting. You slowly start implementing signals, you start implementing ideas, you start implementing rules and regulations, you start transmitting things to these people to get them to do things they don't want to do. The government's been working on shit like that for a long time. It's the truth. It's not a conspiracy, it's the truth. I mean, look at the Unabomber. He was literally part of a government program designated to control minds to drugs. And he turned into a psychopath who was out there bombing people randomly through the mail. What happens when they don't need to use chemicals, which are not as reliable as they were, but technology that is proven reliable, especially when you can put it in your brain? Especially even if you don't need to put it in your brain, especially if you're young enough that all you ever know is your phone or your laptop or the computer for your access to information, and everything that is being informed to you goes through a filter of what's acceptable or not what is real, what is true or not. That is what AI is becoming. And if you don't see that now, if it doesn't frighten you and you don't realize that, hey, we need to do something now about this, the future is going to be very dark for a lot of people, even the people controlling it now. Because what they fail to realize is that you still need people to generate wealth. And you need innovation to generate wealth. When you stop allowing people to think for themselves, to grow for themselves, only to hold on to a certain ideology or a control-based system of authoritarian oligarchy, you stagnate the ability for people to be authentic or original and innovate, because they no longer can do that because you're not allowing them to do that. Human progress stops and gets very dystopian. First, everyone poor dies, and then what's left of the rich people, and then they go after themselves. It's just how that works. It's a bad look because people think, oh, no, that'll never happen. We're literally in the beginning of it now. People don't realize how close we are to a nuclear war and World War III. Why? Especially Americans. Why? Because we are fortunate because of our geography that we are able to live outside of most of it. America is large enough and far away enough and isolated enough of a country that we don't interact with the rest of Europe and the Middle East like they have to because they're not connected by borders. And up until Trump, Mexico and Canada were still pretty much allies. But Trump is making them enemies. So it literally is only a matter of time before it's on our doorstep. And the technology that's going to drive that coming to our doorstep is progressing at such a high rate that it's going to get here before most people realize it. They have every person, all of us, so focused on, just surviving day to day and looking at what the next calamity in the news is going to be, that they're able to distract you from what they're actually doing, at least most of us. And that the people like myself and people who are far better at it, that are trying to alert people to what is coming and what is going to happen if we don't shift our focus and take action, are going to be blindsided by what's coming. That's a reality. And I don't want to see that happen. I do not want to see this world turn into some technocratic authoritarianism or fucking, corporate oligarchy shit. Do I know it's going to happen in at least small parts around the world? But if they have their way, it'll be the whole world. And that's going to be a problem for the vast majority of people if you're not someone who is immensely wealthy now and can pass that wealth on to your children. These people are so caught up in the idea of legacy that they would destroy the world to hold on to the little bit of power they have through their money. They want to be gods so bad. But they're not even, but they weren't good people to begin with. They were just successful people. And I think that's something that we all have to think about as well. Does success mean you're right? Does success mean that what you believe is the correct way to believe? And I would argue with a lot of evidence that no, because if that was the case, even though there's an uptick in Nazism, whatever, I'll probably get demonetized for saying that word, but the Yazis, even though that's an uptick, especially in America right now, Hitler, at least to my understanding, was either killed or killed himself, and the Nazi Party was disbanded. But because the remnants of that stayed in the shadows and was able to move around, they are able to manipulate things. I mean, hell, we don't even have AI now, and people are misinformed about why the South seceded from the North, what the war was about, even though it's clearly documented, because people are too apathetic to fucking go read a book. And it's sad, because if people were just a little bit more inquisitive, a little less caught up in their own bigotry and bias, they would understand that what they're endorsing, especially those on the right, is not going to lead to the outcomes that they want. And even if they do get the outcomes that they want, it's going to be for such a small period of time before shit hits the fan. They're not going to really be able to enjoy what they think they got. And it's already happening now with what, all these people that voted for Trump, what he's doing with healthcare, what he's doing with the veterans, what he's doing with immigration. Even though a lot of them still are on his side, which you can tell those are the most bigoted, racist, ignorant version of the bunch, the ones who have at least some level of understanding are realizing, oh, I screwed up. And this is going to be a problem for me too. So, yeah. We got to do something. The end is near, for lack of a better term. But the outcome still can be determined by people if we can actually act together. And my message to black folks, FBAs, the diaspora, NDOS, I understand that we have our differences, but it's not like we all don't understand that our differences, at least when it pertains to America, were created not by us, but by Europeans. The Europeans invaded Africa. They divided it up. They subjugated the people and misled the people. And they're trying to do it again. All because of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. France just bought the largest communications company in Africa to start propagandizing Abraham Traore and his people. Now, thankfully, I think we're at a point now where at least there are enough Africans and black people smart enough to realize that what you're going to do is going to create problems. I do have faith in black people that we won't just lay around 100% and let this shit go down. But in America, there's such a high level of division and apathy, and they just keep trying to ramp it up. They have black men and black women fighting over who gets to lead in a black relationship, not realizing that neither one of you should be leading. It's a relationship. It doesn't have to be I always lead and you always follow. It's a relationship. And contrary to what these red pillars or black pillars will tell you, every man, even if he's the leader of his household, is not good at everything. There are many women out there, black women especially so, that are incredibly capable of accomplishing things without a man in their lives completely. And the same could be said for men. So what we need to get to is in a place, at least in my personal opinion, is that we need to understand that, look, we need to respect each other mutually. We need to understand that as men and as women, just because I'm a man with desire doesn't mean there's not a woman without desire. And for women, just because I have mine doesn't mean a man's not going to have desire. And that for relationships to work, that means compromise. Because if you want everything and want to give nothing back, you're pretty much no better than any dictator that you dislike. That's what dictators are. They take and give nothing back. That's what authoritarians are. They take and give nothing back. Authoritarian, sorry. And it seems like we've gone to this place where people want to push this authoritarian idea onto even their personal relationships, their personal intimate relationships. I think that's fucking stupid. And I think what's funny is that all these red pillars and all these women out here, you know, all the misandrists and all the misogynists, you know, they forget that the ideas they're spouting now are the reason we're here. Like, it's almost like you don't realize, it's like, you know why shit's fucked up? Because you're trying to take it back to a place that brought us to this fucked up place. Especially the men. I will literally say especially the men on this. I gotta give it to that. And it's not because I'm a pick me. Listen, I'm single. And if nobody picks me, fuck it, whatever. Doesn't mean I'm gonna always be happy that I'm single, but I'm like, yo, I don't give a fuck if a woman doesn't pick me because I'm being honest. If a woman doesn't want to be with me for being truthful, fine. I'd rather be honest and alone than to live my life in a lie to get with someone who only likes me lying. Right? So listen. But anyway, and then men, I don't need a man as my friend if I have to lie for him to be my friend. The truth of the matter is, fellas, and not all men, but at least these men in the manosphere, what y'all want to bring us back to is the reason we're here in the first place. And the idea that you cannot see with all the intelligence and all superiority that you claim to have as men, that we're here because of that being handled the way it was handled in the past, you're missing the plot. Because that we already lived through that. And look where it got us. You're like, well, yeah, women got birth control. These things were coming. Women wanted these things. Men wanted these things. Right? And now that you got them, you're trying to go, oh no, we need to go back and revert it. Like, even if you're successful in that happening, like, eventually it's not going to either make it worse the next time around, or it just won't come back. So I'm like, there's got to be a better route than let's go back to the 1950s. Let's go back to traditional. Because even women now that want to call themselves trad wives or traditional wives, when you really look it back and take the veil off, you're not fucking traditional. You're cosplaying as traditional. These men are cosplaying as traditional. These women are cosplaying as traditional. They aren't fucking traditional. None of them are. They're using the past to push an even worse agenda now, where one of them is in power. And it's fucking dumb. Right? Do I think everything that feminism has done is correct? No, I don't. There's things I disagree with. Because I think they shot themselves in the foot, maybe not the creators, but where it's gone in certain areas. Not because I think women aren't capable, but I think that you want to be held capable, then you need to hold yourself to the exact same standard. And I'll give an example of where I felt feminism went wrong. Hate me in the comments if you want. Because guess what? It's not just feminists that did this, it's men that did it too. And what I'll say is the military. There is a lower physical standard required for women to participate in the military than there is for men. Does that mean that women are incapable of doing things? Wrong. That's not what I mean. Because guess what? There are well-documented women in other countries and in America who are military soldiers who are badass and get shit done. Right? They're actually accomplished and they're actually capable. Right? But I would say those women are the exception and are not the rule by the numbers and what people are actually doing. Because here's the thing. you're only as strong as a team as your weakest opponent. And war is very physical. It isn't just mentally demanding, it is physically demanding. I have no doubt in my mind that on the mental capacity, women are just as capable of being good in, warcraft, in defense, and all those things. The science and the mind capability, I honestly believe women can be just as capable, maybe in some scenarios, even be better than men because of their outlook and their ability to play more subtly on things and less forcefully. But when you come down to the actual war fighting of a thing, the science there is, unless augmented by medicine, which we can do, that a base level human man versus a base level human woman, man is going to be a little bit physically better in certain areas. And I would say war fighting. We have a lot more upper body strength. We naturally have a lot more endurance. We can burn more fat and expend more energy under pressure and tension. And the fact that men don't get pregnant. We don't, at least, and I would say men as far as, I'm using this term because I don't have a better term, but a man who identifies as a man and is born with a penis and testicles, their genetics allows them to be physically more capable in those type of situations than a woman is. Does that mean all women are? No. There are women out there who and I've seen some, who can be just as capable. They're not the norm though. And I don't know if that's literally because of genetics or if that's just because of how we've grown as a society, that women who don't have those personal traits just aren't mated with as much. Because if you think about it, there was a time where men and women had to be a little bit more closer in capability physically because everybody was out there struggling, right? And because women get pregnant and have kids, men didn't. That role would come along where, hey, I'm the bigger, more physically stronger person. So when you're pregnant and you're at a physical disadvantage out in the wilds, the man can go out there and protect you. Now, how does that translate to today? This is where I think, and this is my personal take on it, because society has revolved itself around that idea, I think that we probably have selectively bred out, for the most part, women who are physically on the same level as men, because when those women became pregnant and society was forming, the culture of that woman would stay home and be a mother and the man would go out and do all the work type of deal was established. And that leads into the biology, because evolutionary, if you're breeding women and they're not going out there and actually having to refine those muscles through hunting, through war fighting, through all these things, they're not going to wake up those genetic markers that are going to allow that to sustain, right? And for the few that you do, like, you have notable females. There are notable female warriors in Africa. There are notable female warriors in Europe. There are notable female warriors in Japan. Now, granted, there may be one or two. It's nowhere near the thousands of male leaders and conquerors and warriors that there are, but those women existed. And I'm like, if we understand how, the intersectionality of culture and biology, it's not hard to understand or even figure this out. And I don't think I've heard anyone say it, that we might have unintentionally bred out physically capable women at a vast scale, because being able to ensure survivability was easier doing that, because you could put all that physical burden on one dude. But here's the funny part, even then those women weren't completely safe. You know what I'm saying? They just increased the odds of their safety because they didn't have to be put out. They didn't have to go into danger. They stayed home. Their problem was that danger could come to them. But let's be honest, men and women survive not just based on that, because those social dynamics of the woman staying home and the man going out to fight were not ubiquitous from every culture in every world. They just seem to be the most popular one that taken over the world. And especially because, Christianity and a lot of these religions that have come along have been so powerful and they propagate these ideas, it's very easy to see we've selectively bred out physically capable women. But every once in a while, because those genetics have never gone away, you see physically capable women in the wild. And because it's such a rare sight, and because of our culture, we downplay that, or we ostracize them, we make fun of them, right? It's like, there are literally some female bodybuilders out there right now who are more physically jacked and more physically capable than a lot of men. There are literal female powerlifters right now who are naturally more gifted than a lot of men, right? Now, as a whole, there's a reason. And this is my reason why. I don't honestly believe it's like women were always weaker and smaller. Now, what they use to lend to their idea of this is because in other animal species, that's the case. But I don't think that's necessarily the case with humans because guess what? We evolved through time. And there's documentation of women being leaders, warriors, and everything, fighting alongside and against men and succeeding. So once you understand that history is true and you start looking at things, you start to realize, hey man, there's more to this game than we think. And until we are honest with ourselves and honest with our history, we're going to keep going down this road and creating problems and creating division that doesn't necessarily need to be there, right? Because I don't feel any less of a man knowing that some other woman makes more money than me or some woman is literally physically stronger than me. I am 6'2", 325 pounds right now. I can consistently bench 405. I like to work out with 315. I can consistently, when my bulges in my back aren't giving me problems because I have injuries, are not giving problems, but I can consistently deadlift, 500 pounds, and when I'm trying to get into peak ranges, 600 pounds. And I'm talking, I've been capable of, without a belt, consistently deadlifting, upwards of 585 pounds without a belt continuously. So that is very strong for a man. That's above average. But I've literally watched female powerlifters do more than me. Yeah, they're competing, so the exception, not the rule, but that tells you something. Women are capable of this. Not every woman, but reality is not every man is capable of doing what I can do. There are a million men out there who will never be able to consistently bench 300 pounds, 400 pounds at any weight. Never mind, I can consistently do pull-ups, and I'm a 325 pound man, right? And if somebody watches this video and doesn't believe me, ask me a question, I will record myself doing pull-ups. I can do this, and I am not ashamed to say this, right? And I can consistently do this, and I'm a 300 pound man, right? And you see videos of women doing pull-ups. Yeah, they're not as big as me, but that's the thing. There's not that many 300 pound men that can do pull-ups like that. There's not that many men that are under my weight, which it should be easier for them to consistently do pull-ups. So this idea of physical superiority, the way that they want to frame it, I think is a bit false. They're ignoring the nuance and they're ignoring what possibly can be the truth of the situation because it doesn't align with the narrative that they want to push. And I get it because most men, especially in America, because of the way our politics is and our culture is going, we don't want to hear anything that might give women a little bit of leg up on us and make us feel some type of inferiority. But here's the thing, gentlemen, we don't have to feel inferior because a woman is just as physically capable of us. If anything, that should give you an idea of, hey, that could possibly be an ally to me. I'm speaking to the men because I feel like I'm a man and I'd much rather talk to men. I think women need to talk to women. I will say I think women should look at it too that, hey, we need to work together because at the end of the day, there's no technology where everyone's breeding kids out of tubes. It's like men are not just going to be making more men and the women aren't just going to be making more women. I understand that there's a small sect of the internet that believes this and wants to push this narrative, but I think it's absolute insanity and garbage to believe this because you're basically pushing for your own demise because of your ego. And I think that's another thing that we've gotten into. And it'll lead into AI. Like, AI is going to push the most narcissistic, crazy, egotistical people to the forefronts of our culture and society for the most bullshit ideas because they're going to align with keeping people in line that these other people do. And we have to be mindful of that. But this video is going on 2 hours. I got to go get my workout in. I just want to get that off my chest. I hope it gave y'all some things to think about. If there's anything that y'all want to correct me on, please put in the comments. I'm still learning. I'm still growing as a person. And I'm fine with someone giving me a counter argument and giving me good proof. I will read it. I may not agree with you, but I'll go research it. And if I can refute it, I'll refute it. But I want to refute it with facts. And if I'm right, then I'm right. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. And I'll admit that. I am not afraid of being wrong because when you're wrong, you can learn and grow. But what I ask is, have integrity, be honest, and don't try to sell me no bullshit because I'm going to call it out. But with that being said, I love y'all. I hope y'all are doing well. I wish y'all the best. If anybody watches this, thank you, because if I'm being honest, I don't post a lot on here because a lot of people don't watch my shit. I've had one video that got a lot of views, but I haven't had a video that's been successful for a while. And please like, comment, and subscribe because if people start watching these things, I'll build this channel. I'll work on it. I ultimately really don't want to be in front of the camera, but I would do it if I have to. And the reason I'm talking out on this right now is because I think it's important. I think we need more voices talking about these ideas, these topics in the world, and bringing it to light for people from all different avenues, because if enough people do that and enough people get exposure, we might be able to bring this world not back to a time that we perceived as good, but forward to a time that really is good. I believe in understanding your past, not trying to go relive it, right? Because, you know, it's pretty much well documented that the past wasn't great for everyone, but our future definitely can be. And that really just takes all of us getting to the own idea. We can still have differences of opinion, we can still have different ideologies, but if we literally take care of some core basic things and protect ourselves against some powerful manipulations and machinations of some very power hungry and greedy people, that the world can pretty much live in a better relative peace than it's been living in, and not some propagandized peace, but a real peace that allows people to actually grow and do wealth. And that we can have a lot more wealthy people in the world, a lot less poverty. I'd rather a world where everyone has the truly, not propagandized false truths, but truly, honestly does have access and the ability to becoming wealthy. So that if you're poor, you're not manipulated into poverty, you actually choose it for yourself, not through machinations of people trying to usurp you or take your power, but because you're like, I just don't want to do this and I feel like being a poor person. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you research enough, there's some people who really don't want to live that life, and they'll choose that life. It's a very small number of people, a very small number of people, but there are some people that'll do that. But I'd rather a world where it's like, look, everyone has access to all the knowledge and education in the world. We are able to identify what is true and what is a lie, you know, objectively true. I understand we're in this place of where my truth is and all. No. We need a world where we are putting out, everyone has access to the objective truth, the objective history. And we understand that, the good and the bad, and understand that, hey, we can do better in the future. And if we get to that point where we treat everyone equally in the sense of everyone has equal access to education, to healthy quality of living, to financial prosperity, to good housing and everything, people are still going to divide themselves. You're still going to have places where mostly white and black and Asian people click, and that's not necessarily a problem. But if everybody's educated going, I like to stay with my Asian people more, and I don't have to hate because someone may be coming over here to visit and join my culture, and just because somebody of a different race or creed may come in here, does not mean it diminishes my culture. We keep playing zero-sum games acting like we're actually going to win. And the sad part is, when you continue to play zero-sum games, especially at the global levels that we're playing them at, everyone dies. Even the winner, or the perceived winner, dies. Because they forget that in order for them to stay at the top, they need other people to work with them. And I think these people understand that, so what they're trying to do is hold a captive audience. But that pretty much also only hastens that end, because it's unsustainable. But okay, I'm done. I've talked enough. I've said enough. I'm gonna get off of here. Love y'all. Be safe. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.